Hi guys, welcome back to my channel Lush Foliage. In today's video we are going to be talking about another beautiful philodendron called as the Philodendron Paraiso Verde. Now guys, this is the mother leaf. I will put up the image on the screen of how it looked earlier when I had purchased it. Right now it's in a terrible condition, of course because of the change in the environment. So now you can see the leaf is in a very bad condition, but that's absolutely okay. Now this is a very expensive plant currently. If I'm going to compare it with the current date versus a year back, there has been a major price difference. Earlier this plant was very expensive, very rare to find, but today again because of tissue culture and stuff like that, this plant has become a little bit more affordable. Again, I wouldn't say it's very rare or it's very common. It's somewhere in between. You might happen to find it online, but not yet in the local nurseries. Especially if you have a smaller local nursery, you might not find it. But of course, you'll find it online, especially with sellers who tend to sell rare plants. You will easily find this plant. Now, what happened with the mother leaf? As you can see, it's in a very bad state, but I'm not taking it off. I'm going to leave it as it is because you can see it's still green in color, which means it's still participating in the process of photosynthesis. Even though it's completely wrecked, all the pieces have come off and it is also starting to dry. Now the issue over here was because this plant was purchased from a seller who lives in a city wherein they have a humidity of above 80%. So that was working out really well. But when it came in to my city was recording a humidity of around 23 to 24%. So you can imagine the vast amount of fluctuation in the humidity. Apart from that, it came in transit. It was in transit for at least 3 to 4 days. So keeping all these things in mind, with the transit period and it coming into a environment wherein the humidity is very low than what it needs, so of course the mother leaf started to have issues. But that is not a problem because that is a usual thing that happens. There were two leaves on this, two large leaves like this, but one of them happened to turn yellow within 2 days and it died off. But this luckily was still surviving and I was very happy about it. Of course it took a lot of toll because of the change in environment, but now the plant is putting out a lot of new growth. You can see this. This is the new leaf. This was the first leaf that came out and I was very worried because you can see it did not have much of the variegation, and as you can see it was completely green in color. The next leaf that came up had a good amount of variegation. As you can see, the variegation is going to be even more than this. This is still okay. I'm okay with it. We also have a new leaf coming up. Now during the summer season, ideally my philodendrons used to stay inside the cataphyll for almost a week, 2 weeks, which is not very good for the leaves to stay inside the cataphyll for a very long time. They do get damaged, they do get wrinkled. But now because the monsoons have arrived, the summer humidity was around 24%, but now because of the monsoon season, the humidity has completely shot up to 80%. At night it's 90%. So because of the increase in humidity, you can see this leaf has unfurled. It's almost about to unfurl, and this has only taken 2 days. You can see how much of the humidity matters to our philodendrons. They tend to unfurl their leaves at a much faster rate as compared to in a low humid environment. So this two of these leaves have come up within a month. This was last month and these two leaves have started coming up in a month. Now this plant is known to have a very good growth rate. That's why you can see it's putting out leaves at a much faster rate. Probably next month it might have another leaf because you can see it already has a cataphyll coming up. So I'm very impressed with the growth rate. You can see I've also used some dried tea leaves, which works really well for our foliage plants. Apart from that, the mix is made out of coco peat, garden soil, sand and perlite. The coco peat is going to maintain slight amount of moisture. The garden soil is going to give the basic nutrients. Sand is going to make the soil well draining because they prefer well draining soil mix, which is loose, porous. They do not like water to be sitting in the pot. Always ensure that your pot has a drain hole so that the excess water can drain out. Don't let the soil stay soggy wet. If the soil is soggy wet, then the plant will have a root rot. Whenever you see around 1 to 2 inches of the upper layer of soil is dry, you can go and do a complete watering until the water starts passing through the drain hole. Now talking about propagation, it is pretty simple to propagate this plant. I don't have the nodes yet because this is a young plant, but it's the same process of how you tend to propagate your philodendron. I'll put the link in the description below. You can check it out. Now guys, this is a climbing plant. It requires a pole. Now unfortunately you can see the pole is at a different space, and where the plant is growing it's different. So this was just a temporary pole that I had used, a coir pole. I will change it and I'll put a pole over here, but not now, as in when the plant will start to grow. It's still very young. It does not require support as of now, but when it starts to grow, I'll use the pole over here so that it can attach itself, because the leaves are growing in this direction, and then the pole can support the stem. So this is a climbing plant. You need to offer it support, otherwise the plant will start to fall downwards. Now talking about fertilizers, please do not use fertilizers during the winters. You can go ahead and use fertilizers during the summers because that's their active growing period. During monsoon season, I would suggest do not use fertilizers. You can just use rainwater, because during the monsoon season the fungus, mold are in its active growing period. So a lot of your plants, if you tend to use a lot of organic matter, a lot of fertilizers, you might happen to notice a lot of mold and fungus developing on the soil or even on the plant. So avoid using fertilizers during the monsoon season. One, because it's very moist, damp, there is hardly much sunlight, and everything is wet everywhere, so it's very easy for a lot of mold and fungus to grow. All you can do is just use rainwater, and that is going to be very beneficial for your plant. A lot of my plants are in the open. I let them get a good amount of rainwater. There are some plants, or there are some foliage plants that do not get rainwater, so for them I collect the rainwater in the bucket and then give that rainwater. I completely stop using any kind of old water, because right now I don't need old water. Rainwater is more than enough for them. Tap water, any which ways, I do not use it for my foliage plants. At times what happens is I do not have old water, so I end up using drinking water. But right now, because there is abundance of rainwater, so I use that. It works out really well. I don't need to use drinking water. Now talking about pest issues, yes, these plants do get affected with spider mites and mealybugs. Mealybugs, you'll often tend to see it on the stem area, like this area, especially when there is new growth. You'll find mealybugs. Spider mites are going to be beneath the leaves, so always do a routine check, because it's very difficult to understand if the plant is affected with spider mites because of the variegation of the leaves. So always turn the leaves and check. If you even happen to see a small bunch of spider mites, immediately use your organic solution that you have been using and get rid of it at the early stage. Do not wait for the last minute. Once the infestation increases, it's very difficult to get rid of those bugs. Now I'm not very sure how expensive you'll find it online. Initially it was in 4 digits, but now you also get it in 3 digits, probably anywhere between 800-900 rupees as well. You will find this plant. So if you get a hold of it, then definitely buy it, because it's an absolutely beautiful, very fast growing as per what I have noticed. It is definitely putting out a lot of new growth within a span of month. I have 2 leaves and the 3rd leaf is on its way, so it does quite well. Now talking about light, please do not expose it to direct afternoon sunlight. The leaves will get burnt. You can offer indirect bright light, dappled sunlight, filtered light. You can even offer early morning sunlight. If you have any sunlight that falls before 10 a.m, you can offer it. You can grow it indoor, you can grow it outdoor, but if you're growing it indoor, ensure it's closer to the windowsill where it gets a good amount of indirect bright light, because you can see this variegation. It will only show up on the leaves if it gets a good amount of light. If there is lack of light, then the leaves will come out more green in color. Now this plant is known for its variegation, so in order to maintain a good amount of variegation, offer it a good amount of indirect bright light, dappled light or filtered light. It is going to do quite well. Apart from that, is this plant toxic? Yes, this belongs to the genus of Philodendron, so of course it's going to be toxic. So ensure you're keeping this plant away from the reach of small children and pets, because if the leaves are ingested, it can be toxic. If they have ingested the leaves, take them to the doctor as soon as possible, because the leaves can be quite toxic. So apart from that, it's a fairly easy to grow plant. Temperature and humidity, the same thing, because this is a tropical plant. You have to offer a good amount of humidity. Anywhere above 50 to 60% is going to work out really well. Low humidity, as you know what happened, this was due to the low humidity. This is what's going to happen. But once the plant gets acclimated in your environment, 50 to 60, even 70% of humidity is fair enough for the plant. But if you are from a very dry environment, then of course you'll have to use a humidifier indoor. If you're growing it outdoor, ensure you're clubbing all the plants together. Keep a pebble tray beneath, and you have to mist it probably once or twice during the afternoons. A light misting and cover up a lot of plants around it, because even my environment, apart from the monsoon season, during the winters and summer, it's quite dry. So you can see it's still doing quite well because I've clubbed a lot of plants together, and I do a light misting twice in a day during the afternoons when it gets a little bit warm, and that has been working out really well. I don't see a lot of yellowing of the leaves, which is a good part. A lot of times, due to low humidity, the edges of the leaves also start to turn yellow and crisp. That is another sign that the humidity levels are very low and the plant needs a little bit more humidity. So indoor you can use a humidifier, outdoor you can club a lot of plants together and mist them, keep a pebble tray beneath, and that is going to work out really well. So guys, that's all about it. It's a pretty easy to grow plant if you are going to provide it with the basic care requirements. If you're going to do this, it is going to work out really well. So guys, I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please hit the like button, and if you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing to it. Until then, take care, stay safe, and keep propagating.